Okay, I'll call our June 8th Community Development Authority meeting to order. Roll call, Tim. You've got us, I'm assuming?
Yep,
We're all
thank
here,
you.
which is great. Minutes. Anybody have any questions or look for approval?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
I abstained because I wasn't here before, so.
Okay. Public comment? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Based on nobody in the crowd, we're not gonna have any tonight. Tim, unless you have a public comment you wanna make.
Just one announcement. Included in your packet was this fact sheet from the Regional Housing Advisory Committee. Just a notice that they're going to be convening their steering committee this fall. There was a typo on the form. It said July 27th was the kickoff. It's actually September 28th. So encouraging people to attend that. I plan on being in attendance, but just that's going to be a countywide housing effort. One of the products that will come from that will be that says housing study will have a supply gap analysis for each municipality. Separate analysis for senior housing, residents of color, and disabled will also be included. So hopefully some good data coming from that effort.
Sounds good?
So September 28th?
Yep, September
I thought it was
28th, and that is a
June, July.
6:30 start at the Alliant Energy Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
I do have one comment, Chris, and I don't, because it's not on the agenda, so I'm going to use it public, and that's the meeting, we historically have been meeting Tuesday night. Wednesday night's going to become problematic for me, because I have another meeting at either 7 or 7:30, depending on which, it's always the third Wednesday of the month. So I'm going to struggle trying to get to this meeting. So I'm not sure why it was moved from Tuesday to Wednesday night, but understand that I may not be able to make all the meetings.
So with that said, we can probably modify it around to make sure. Tim, why don't we do that, and we'll look and see if it's a different night during the week we can use. Maybe it's a Thursday. Maybe it's a Tuesday again back, or,
And from my perspective, any Wednesday but the third Wednesday is okay.
okay. So let's work.
A different Wednesday, we can, we'll send out a
Okay.
poll.
Perfect. Thanks for pointing that out, Al. All right, reports. Well, first thing is a report from Tim Semin, CDA Executive Director. You
That
have
was
the floor.
That was my first one, actually, under announcement, so that was the only thing I really had to report, was that Dane County Housing Strategy.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into our business item then. Continuation of discussion of possible priorities, metrics, and criteria to be used for distribution of affordable housing funds from TIF Extension.
Okay, so unfortunately, I'm having a little issue with technology here in my computer talking to the projector. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to look over the packet. Just wanted to give a quick update of how, where we are, how we got here. Over the last several months, obviously, the committee has met several times, looked at different policies from different communities. We went into a couple different exercises that zeroed in or prioritized rehabilitation of existing homes. And so we created some different commentary on that. And based on that, we aggregated those into the different common areas, included administration, eligibility of project, funding mechanism, neighborhoods, and other. Based on that, I think I found a pretty good tool, and several of you, I think, know about this. So about a year ago, the CDA met and had a presentation from a representative from the city of Menasha. And so included in your packet is their program. They're called their Strong Neighborhoods program. It was updated this past January, and that could be used as a framework. So very, very quick summary of it is, it really has two facets, I would say. One is what I would call a smaller amount, which they call the curb appeal, and that's a reimbursable grant up to $5,000 for eligible projects, and those are, of course, income qualified. And then their second is what they call a major renovation, and that's up to $10,000, and that's a forgivable loan, but it's based on the loan being forgiven only if someone lives in their house for 5 consecutive years. And then in addition, they have a portion of that program for property acquisition. So those three tiers. I have several suggestions based on this, but I guess what I first wanted to just open the floor to discussion of, having read this program, having been involved in the discussion to this point, does this seem like we're on the right track? And I'll back up just 1 second saying, there's also a implementation action item in our comprehensive plan that talks about the exploration of development of a housing rehabilitation program to help property owners maintain and rehabilitate older housing stock. That seems to fit right in the wheelhouse with what we're talking about. So I guess if you want to talk about that now, because I guess I don't want to spend a whole lot of time tweaking this if this is not even in the ballpark of the right direction. But again, based on the conversation to this point and all the affinity exercise and so forth, this seemed pretty close to at least what I was hearing you say.
I would agree with that. When I read it, I thought it was a really, it was more than a starting point. It's
Yeah.
significant.
Good template to start with.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
The interesting thing I found in it is their goals are a little bit different than what our goals are, like
Yeah,
the
correct.
opposite.
Yeah.
We're like awesome right now in their eyes, where we're already at.
Yeah.
So their goal and what they're trying to accomplish are not really our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. It's almost the opposite. But the parameters can work, I think, for both. That's what I took from it.
I agree. I think just the idea of the methodology that they're using to evaluate the requests and the awards is good, but to your point, it would be probably a different set of metrics, maybe even a little different scoring method that would be used in it. But I like that idea of the ranking, and it's not just
Yeah.
one or two things that go into the decision-making, like go or no-go process.
Yep. So the other thing that I thought was interesting to note, under their curb appeal, or what I'll call their smaller award, is well, with both of them, there's a scoring sheet. But with the curb appeal program, it's administered internally. And so essentially, it's, if you meet these criteria and it's an objective ranking, you get the funds. And you're all the qualifications, you're eligible, the project is eligible, and so forth, and you meet the score, you get the dollars. The other one would be evaluated by you, by the CDA. It would still have a ranking, and I think that's maybe the last 2 pages in your packet, those scoring metrics, or I'm sorry, scoring matrix. But that would be a little bit more discretionary, because obviously that's a higher dollar figure. So I guess that's a couple of things to note. If you'd like, Chris, I'd be happy to run through. I've got about 6 or 7 suggestions that I had, just wanted to touch on to run past you that I noticed in here. The first being the goals. So if you're okay with that,
Sure.
we can just kind of run through. So this is on in your packet from this most recent packet, page 7 of 22, and that's the red numbering up the upper right. The goals. So my suggestion would be change the goals to something different that more meet Wanakee's goals, something like improve the integrity of older housing stock for income qualified owners and renters within the village, and provide income qualified homeowners financial assistance to aid in the completion of home improvement projects. And just leave it there to start for this project. Something like that. And what I'm proposing is, as we have this discussion, memorialize this and bring it back to the group next time for the sort of the Wanakee version, if that works. I guess if you want to start there, or if you want me to run through some of these other things first.
No, I think that's a great spot to start, for goals and objectives for us of what we're trying to do right now. We've kind of discussed this already, so it shouldn't be very difficult, I don't think, to get our goals. As I said before, it was interesting looking at it, seeing it's just the opposite of what we're doing. They're trying to put the improvements out there to increase the values of their home, whereas we're looking at it from an affordable housing, so that wouldn't be necessarily increasing values of the homes. That would seem to defeat what we're doing. So, correct me if I'm wrong, these other sheets that we worked on, that we came all together with,
That's the
you know, I
background.
think that's probably where we should craft our goals from, because this is probably gonna be making the most sense. Does everybody agree? I don't
Yeah,
wanna.
that was one of my concerns too, the increase. I used to live in Neenah and Manash are twin communities, and so they're, they're neighborhoods that have 85% rentals. That increasing homeownership stability really makes sense in Menasha, but I don't want to say we want homeownership instability, but we definitely need more rentals in town. And some of the homes that I think we've discussed in the kind of more historic part of town that are two flats, I would cross my fingers that some of those homeowners or those building owners would choose to keep rentals available for people. That would just be my preference.
Yeah,
I know you-
I didn't see any
Yeah.
incentive, why we would want to incent people to convert a
Yeah.
two-flat back to a
Single home.
family home, because it's a unique type of rental property. It brings a little variety to your mix of rental properties, and generally speaking, they're not real high-end
Yeah,
cost rental units, so
yeah,
that concept of paying some of our good funds to have somebody convert a two-unit back, if you want to do that, you probably have the funds to do it, and you don't need our help for it, and we can use our money in better places.
yeah.
To that point, would you think incenting a homeowner to actually divide their home into two if they were thinking about making it a rental as?
That's an economic question for an owner, and I don't know that we need to be involved in that.
I don't have an opinion, I was just asking a question.
Well, I could see where we could, just that question, I mean, this is just right now hearing it. We could give that incentive, but we could also recapture that incentive with their rental. Where they're making a certain percentage of profit, and then some of it's coming back to us
Yeah.
at some point.
Mm.
They'd
Or
also-
if we're keeping it at a rate that we deem as affordable.
You'd have to give a real good look at what kind of funds we would have to make available to make that feasible. Could you do a conversion of one of our older two-story houses? Could you do that for 10 grand? I doubt it. But if they could do it for 20 and we're lending them 10, I guess that's kind of, but.
So the other factor with that conversion of a 1 to a 2, they would still be having to require the income requirement, the low income requirement in order to be able to get the money. So the question is, would there be people that would have enough money to be thinking about that, but yet still be low enough to meet the requirements of, whatever 30% or whatever number we come up with.
Would that income requirement be on the owner of the house, or would you be concerned about the income level of the people they're gonna rent to? So you're creating, we're creating some more accessible rental. So I don't know, well, of course, you wouldn't wanna lend me money to convert a
Right.
house, into two units.
That's
'cause
my
I
point, and
obviously don't
kind of a
need
long,
help,
better way
right?
to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and I don't know procedurally, but if I have a home and I want to make it into half of it leased out to someone else, technically don't have to get approval from the village? So is it a process they have to go through? And so what our recommendation would be to encourage, and that's maybe the wrong word, subdividing of homes into affordable houses. And then we go through the criteria, but I understand we're not gonna, and agree that we're not gonna go back and say, okay, you've created a two-flat, and we're now gonna say you can't do that. But going forward, they're gonna have to come clean and say, hey, I'm gonna create a two-flat at this point in time. Now the village is gonna step in and say, wait a second, your rental property, now you got neighborhood issues, you got other issues you gotta deal with first. So it's not just, we wanna give money to them to renovate, in this case, the two-flat. There's gotta be approvals and authorization to do that. So from this group's committee, or responsibility, is it a matter of encouraging or recommending, or some language that says one of our goals is to make affordable housing, such as making two flats of existing buildings or something similar to that, whereby the rental portion of the house has to include tenants of X AMI or something like that. There's a lot to that.
At the same time, I remember, I don't know how many years ago, there were many people who live in those areas, that the last thing they want is for, single family to become two flats.
And that's why I said it's gotta be a process, not just with the village, but with the neighborhood as well. And again, I'm not being critical of what's happened. I just think if we're gonna make this part of our program, it's gotta be a formal process that someone goes through to convert.
I wonder how many conversions we've had in the last 20 years. Probably not a lot.
Yeah, my reasoning for bringing it up wasn't to forward the idea of converting single-family homes to two. It was the opposite. You know, in Menasha, they really want those two flats to go back down to single-family. That's not our goals here. I don't think it is.
No, but our goal is to create affordable housing, and one of the ways is to go through this process, if that's what we wanna do, is to allow for subdivision of homes into 2 units, one of which is rental, one is owner occupied, and then the criteria on the rental portion is X, whatever that is.
If indeed they were low income to start, now they have a rental property, they're no longer low income.
Right.
With the rent that they're most likely going to push them over that threshold. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, I'm not being negative, I agree with you, it's a good thing. I'm just trying to figure out how we formalize it.
So to focus back to goals of what we're trying to accomplish with whatever we're going to do. One single to flat housing, I don't know what we call it. That could be one option. What are our other options? So that's, if our goal is affordable housing, that's an option. We could have, I'm not suggesting that all these are what we should do. I'm just throwing out some different options of what could be done. One, a trailer park we could have in the community. The housing is gonna be much less affordable, or much more affordable, I should say. And it's a lot of density going into one spot. That's an option of what we could do. We've talked about garages, and people converting their garages into single places behind their detached garages, that we do something to that effect. Habitat for Humanity, another option for us. I know we've been in some contact with them to this point. We could work with our business community. I look and say, Wisconsin Dells has a small population, but they have a large working population that comes in, so the businesses have created their own apartments where they'll have 2, 3, 4 people living in a dormitory style of living. It's a living space. And those individuals still pay rent as part of it. You know, is there a way we could have a program that we could help our business community that may be needing housing? That we have several businesses come together and we help to build something, create something for those wage earners that we've talked about that we're missing, that we'd have an option. I think that could help our business community heavily. We're getting employees here. Where does it get built? Don't know. I'm just talking about throwing out different ideas of where we could go with this. That's, to just come out and say, we're gonna be able to build new houses right now, I think is pipe dream. At this point, it just is.
The other thing we have been talking about is preservation of existing housing stock. And so I think to your point, you know, you're throwing out options to get into the affordable category. And I think if we look at what we have right now, I think we all agreed before, really the apartments and maybe some of the townhomes or duplexes are really the only options that fit into that. Because even some of these smaller, older homes, kind of in the higher density original area, they're not affordable anymore either. What you would think is the most affordable homes in Wanakee are not necessarily in that category of affordable. So, yeah.
And I'm, my understanding, and maybe I'm getting confused, is we're honing in on the repairs and maintenance, and as you talked, Tim, you know, I guess what we were talking about from the last meeting is actually the community development block grant. That part of this program, not as expansive as the rest of it, and that is providing a fund that allows for, and we talk generically and could be wrong or change, but loans for the purpose of doing this type of stuff, one of which we just talked was making 2 flats. That would be an acceptable mechanism. So the other stuff that you're talking about, Chris, I agree, there's a lot of things we could do with a lot more money. I think there's.
The goals, that's what I'm trying to get at, so that,
But this is just, again, you're on a bigger goal than I'm on at this point in time, and maybe that's where the disconnect is. My focus is more laser at this point in time, whereas you're looking at a bigger picture than I am. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm trying to look at Menasha based on what our prior discussions are and saying, okay, this is the focus of what we're looking at. And I struggle a little bit because, okay, so we go out and someone says, hey, program says you get 10 grand for fixing up your house. Guess what? Your real estate taxes are gonna go up now too. So, is that affordable? Yeah, we allowed you to improve in your home and the housing stocks can go up and all this kind of stuff, but real estate taxes will then go up too, because of that. So it's kind of a,
can we do a freeze? I don't know if we can do that or not. I'm not a tax person, but could we do a freeze on that if we do that for 5 years? Just kind of like what we're saying, that we're gonna maybe do a 5-year interest or no payment.
Well,
So
the
we get-
$10,000 improvement in your house isn't gonna have a dramatic
it's a whole lot.
impact on
$100
your check.
probably.
But for
Yeah.
lower income
Yeah,
people, a couple
that's
$100
what- yeah.
matters. So it just does, so.
And I've asked that same question, Chris, because I've seen other communities, I don't remember where they were at, but once a person hits a certain age, 65, their real estate tax, they're frozen. They're in after at that home as a mechanism to keep people in their home, because right now, my biggest expense is my real estate taxes by far. And not that I'm in a need where it's not gonna kill me, but I can see where people would say, you know what, real estate taxes are getting astronomical, and how do I continue to pay for these things? And that's where I see that, yeah, okay, so real estate taxes are getting high, but we're gonna give you 10 grand to help you maintain or improve your house. That's kind of the trade-off as I see it.
Okay, you said other municipalities, is that in Wisconsin or other states?
I think it's other states. I
I
don't
know
look,
Indiana, or I believe Indiana was looking at that at one time, so.
it might have been California that I saw it, or it was some other state that did, or Minnesota or someone, but they're able to freeze the real estate taxes. And I think someone opined at some point in one of our meetings, they can't do that here. I don't know if you can or can't.
That's
But-
what I was getting at. I'm not sure what we can or can't do with it.
Yeah, and that's a great thought, because, at some point, it's not, as you age, and you're on Social Security, and I know I use it as jokingly, fixed income, that real estate tax bill gets to bite. And you can talk about new schools, you can talk about swimming pools, you can talk about all this great stuff, and they are great things. But on the other hand, someone's gotta pay that back.
Okay. So then let's focus then to the goals of our committee, is what I was kind of getting at. So Tim started with an improvement plan for homes. That's what we're with tonight. So I think that we should have a goal along those lines. Another goal may be what I was referring to, which is affordable housing specific. So you're going kind of in buckets as our goals, and we're trying to achieve those different things. But there's only so much money at this point. So the bucket that makes sense for us to go to is this right now. It's not me.
So that was my impression as well,
Yeah.
based on
Yeah.
conversation. So that's why I kind of phrased it what I said based on the discussion, which was improving the integrity of older housing stock for income qualified owners and renters within the village. I think going where you're going, and maybe other places with our past discussion, we could be here for a long time again. And I think that maybe starting with a program like this and seeing how it works to meet that goal, and then expand it as if need be, or if wanted, et cetera, of just a thought. If I may, on the previous discussion about the conversion that David brought up, I guess because that was one of the things on my list. My question on that was simply, do you want to incentivize the reduction in number of housing units within the village? Because that's what Menasha's program essentially is doing. And if the answer is no, then it's easy for me just to go strike. And because obviously that lessens supply, which, albeit perhaps small, but has an impact. And so by incentivizing the conversions, are we in fact going the wrong way? as I think David, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe that's kind of what you were alluding to.
Yeah, I totally am against the concept of paying people to convert rental properties back to single family. I mean, it wouldn't be inexpensive. And, you know, what do we gain from it? Fewer rental units and less variety in our rental stock,
Right.
so.
And Chris, I think you're right on with goal, setting the
Yeah.
goal, because that would not meet that goal.
Right.
If we're talking about increasing the number of affordable
Much more
units or
interested in
assisting
helping
people.
them make sure those units are acceptable rentals.
Yeah.
Up to code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that,
Yeah. That was one thing in noticing, I didn't notice a significant difference between what you could apply for as a landlord versus what you could apply for as a homeowner in the Menasha. And I share the same thing, I would like it if our rental stock in our older homes was really nice quality. Energy efficient windows and modern kitchens and, I know that we have some rental units that, you know, over time, wear and tear. The thing I was surprised that wasn't in here for Menasha is anything on energy efficiency. Knowing that one of the month-to-month burdens for renters and folks with lower income is that they're heating either utility bills. And I don't know if that's included just in general renovations or the curb, having been through Menasha many times, and I love Menasha, it's a great community, but I understand the curb appeal. Some homes some homes in disrepair, but then to have nothing in here, there's a lot of homes there that are also energy inefficient, and I know some of our older, I'm imagining, I don't know, but I'm imagining some of our older homes have furnaces that are 25 years old, and,
So one of the things we could be doing then is helping folks to understand the energy efficiency capacities, that there's already rebates that are coming in for those things to put in, to cause them to be less expensive already, that we could be piggybacking with. Does that make sense? It's more of an education thing
Yeah.
out to the public.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that we could certainly, we don't have to take Menasha's last two pages here and say that's it. We can add or subtract from it if we want, and that might be one of them. What does it add to energy efficiency of the house, or whatever the terminology is?
As a desirable improvement.
Yes, right.
yeah.
One thing that I'm thinking, and this is from a different perspective than what I'm hearing, is when it comes to rental properties, I understand that energy efficiency is important, and I would like, to see those types of projects being done, and energy efficient furnaces, and a lot of these older places perhaps don't have air conditioning, which with climate change, it's getting more and more needed. Those type of improvements I can understand doing for a rental property, but something like finally getting all the disrepair things that they've let go for years and years to be included in this, I feel differently about. Yes, I want people to have good rental properties, but how do we say it has to be something that isn't because you haven't kept it up over the time you've owned it?
Referred to as deferred maintenance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the part I struggle with a little bit, and I understand what you're saying. Well, what's acceptable to me may not be acceptable to you and vice versa.
That's why I don't rent.
If
So
we're
that's the
looking at
argument
a-
I have.
I think, though, there's value in incentivizing people who have rental properties to make sure they're, at least of a adequate, I mean, you can take and rent anything as long as you can close the doors on it. To provide shelter,
Yeah.
But that's an improving of our housing stock. And we're not talking about giving them, $50,000, $75,000 to create a whole new thing. But I mean, you're talking about $5,000 to $10,000. That's pretty fundamental improvements, and that's what our worksheet is supposed to kind of, make sure that we aren't spending it on putting in a new large screen TV set rather than, fixing the plumbing. That's.
But I gotta go back, because I think we gotta really set the goal. Because that could improve the property, rent it to somebody that's not low income at this point. Now you've spent the money, and you're not helping increase the number of people needing the assistance. You're,
Yeah, we don't wanna,
we
we don't
gotta
wanna
get to that,
incent them to
we
fix it
gotta
and
make
then
sure
they
we're
raise
getting to
rents
that
by
goal of
150 bucks a
affordable,
month.
creating affordable housing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge with this, and I haven't said this, Al, you might have brought it up at one point, who's gonna monitor what we do?
Right, right.
Because I look at, what's their ability to pay? Who's managing it, as they do? And all of a sudden, their income goes from, 20,000 to 95,000. For whatever reason, that happens with people. And who's monitoring any of this? And I don't know how we're gonna handle that.
Yeah, in this particular case, though, whatever the criteria is that allows these people to get the money, I would suspect it's a one-and-done type thing. It's, you meet the criteria, you're allowed, 10 grand, whatever the program is, here it is. And then I don't think Tim's gonna wanna go out and visit and review tax returns and
I agree.
W-2s and.
But who's gonna initially do it?
Well, and that's where, a good question, Chris, if we say, if one's contingent on the other, in other words, we're gonna give you 10 grand, but then you gotta rent to someone who's of the 50% of AMI. Okay, so someone's gotta get the W-2 out and look at it and make sure it works. But do we really wanna have that 50% of AMI? Or does the unit by itself dictate who moves there? I mean, if it's a $300 unit, someone making $500,000 isn't gonna move there.
So I think what we could do, frankly, for administrative, is the homeowners or the people that are renting, we could put that onus on them if they're getting the discount, that they get that information and provide it to us, completed with a form. That we just have to review something versus catching and trying to get information. Trust me, I know this right now. Trying to get information, financials and different things from people can be a challenge.
Yep, it is. But again, I'm gonna step back and simply say, be generic, is the value of the unit, is that gonna determine who moves there? If I can move to Lamp House and pay whatever the rent is there, it's got a lot more amenities than if I move to an upper flat someplace, which is gonna have, and my in-laws have an upper flat, and you walk in there, you're ducking your head because of the roof, and the bathroom's kind of, I'm not gonna move there. But someone will, of that income capacity, because so it's the unit that's gonna control who lives there and the rent that's being paid. It's not so much whether they're 30% or 40% or 50%, 100% of AMI. It's the unit that controls, and that's my point, is just let the unit control.
So should it be based on what they're charging for rent?
You can certainly put a caveat in there about the rent. That'd be okay. It's just, I don't want
Then you have to monitor it.
I don't want a compliance issue
Like
here.
more simple,
On the
better.
other programs you're talking about, I think we have monitoring issues. You use the term on the mobile park and, or the land lease park, or whatever it is, those require monitoring. But this, I think they'll, laissez-faire, let the buyer beware, whatever, let the democracy take its toll, and someone decides to live there and pay $300 a month, they know what they're getting. And hopefully it's someone who works at a local store making $15 an hour, and it's not me.
I think, the multifamily, the apartments, if there's going to be some that are designated for low to mid, moderate income, whatever financing mechanism that they're using to help that moderates it usually, whatever, like WEDA or state or federal housing fund that they qualify for, that's separate, that's on them. So I think on our side, it's more of that mix of having the options that, because you're right, it would be an administrative nightmare to try to.
Well, and it's someone's time. I mean, it's actual cost. Tim's gotta go out, where's your W-2, and he walks away for half hour to get there, half hour to get back, and half hour to discuss. You spend an hour and a half, and,
Even just the collection of personal information like that is a whole nother.
I think of privacy issues.
So I'm trying to look at this just like a apartment renting company would be doing. They're gonna take their taxes, they're gonna see what their income is to make sure that they can afford to pay their rent. We are gonna be forced almost to do that if we're giving money to create a flat. okay, when your renter comes in, you've gotta provide this documentation to us after you receive it, cause you're gonna wanna know you're gonna get paid too. So,
That's done initially at the, when you rent out your place for the first time, you do a credit check on the people, and you ask for the financial information, but, you know, as.
that's what we would need to do, is what I'm saying.
Did they request financials in the Menasha example?
Yes.
Of the personal financials?
Yeah, so
Okay.
on page 15 of 22, again on the red, in the upper right, page 10 of the actually thing, there is the application process, and in that it includes all the submittal materials, some of which are, says additional requirements for loan programs. 3 recent consecutive months of paycheck stub, last 1 year full tax return, federal W-2s, 1099s, recent 6 month checking savings statements, recent retirement, financial asset statements, et cetera. So when I spoke to a woman who administers this at Menasha, they do all this in-house. Granted, I mean, they have 2 more staff people there than we do here. But they collect all this before someone can even get a dollar. So all of that stuff is required off right out the chute. And I think, Al, to your point, I think this really is a one and done. So someone's gonna meet the criteria or they're not. And if they do, in the case of those grants, it'll just be, you know, X number of dollars for windows or whatever. Your income qualified based on your submittal, and here's the money.
And I agree with you, but this is the traditional residential house, where it's a single-family home. What we've been talking about is that single-family home who subdivides the home and rents it out, and trying to get to the renter, not the homeowner. And I guess we haven't defined who's getting, well, we know who's gonna get the money, but based on that, we'll agree to give you the money if the renter has X AMI. That's how I was reading the discussion here.
Yeah, based on their income ability to pay.
So it's a little deeper than just, I 100% agree with that, it's one and done on this level, but the question is, how do we get to the renter?
So there's, I heard you, there's 2 things. One is the first thing I thought you said is if someone creates a new apartment, or no?
No, well, they could,
I mean, that's a whole, I'd see that as a whole different thing, more kind of like the ADU program in Madison, but, which I think is a lot longer discussion, but anyway, sorry, go ahead.
well, you can see how there's a lot of things that go from tangents on the discussion here that we can go forever, but I'm trying to simplify it, one, from the program itself, because it gets too complex, people aren't gonna use it. And second of all, the compliance aspect of it.
So that's right, I think with the goal, if you have a pretty narrowly defined goal about the integrity of the older housing stock, and that's kind of your target, some of the criteria is the age of the house, on you know, how things get ranked, and some of the things I think that we might be discussing may not be applicable in this case, because that could be another step or another program or tentacle to the program as it moves forward.
And I do see that. I see this as a small subset of a bigger program, depending what happens with the next tranche of TIF money.
All right, so
So-
I just wanna take it, just to say we're gonna stay in a focused lane here for the remainder of this. I think the thing that we could focus to tonight is housing stock improvement.
Mhm.
Let's take affordability as far as all the other stuff out of it, but let's start with housing stock improvement, grants, potential grants, paid back,
Loans?
loans, potential grants, however we wanna look at it, potential forgivable loan, something along those lines. Let's stay there and look at the policy that they have in place for this, look and see what the positives of it that make sense for us, and some things that we might wanna say, no, that doesn't make sense for Wanakee. Is that fair to everybody? I think that
Yes.
keeps us. And then after we get this nailed down, then we'll go to the next one, which we're gonna start going into the affordable housing aspects then. We're talking about 2 flats, so on and so forth. And then beyond that, we probably won't be ready until we get that big money of TIF. That'll come in with that next one, which would make more sense for that at that time.
But if you're talking the housing stock, do we care if it's single family or if it's 2 flat? If they're gonna take our money, you know, with the same criteria apply, and, you know, if I have a 2 flat or I have a single family, I could apply for either one.
If your income is in a certain range, that you need new windows,
Yeah.
or you need a new roof, or any of those things, that's what this is for.
Mhm.
You know,
Whether it's a
your-
two
your-
flat.
your bricks,
Yeah.
your bricks are coming down. You need to have that fixed, the facade of some sort. Whatever we wanna determine, that could be used for, which they've done in here. I think a pretty good job, actually. So I think it's on page 18 that we've got eligible projects. I think that, I think this is a pretty darn good list
I agree.
that they've done for us,
Yep.
for the eligible products, or eligible projects, I should say.
Shrubs and trees?
It's under A, 1-to-1 matching for owner occupied and 1-to-2 matching for non-owner occupied. I think is that what you're referring to, Chris?
Yeah.
On page 18, yes. And then, under that, 1A, single-family or two-family residence use properties, property owner or tenant cannot spend more than 30% of their gross monthly income on housing-related expense of a minimum project value of 2,000.
Okay,
Couldn't find it either.
okay, thanks.
I'm lost too now, Kristen.
Oh, it's under program details, so it's.
Oh, I think
on our-
he was talking about eligible projects, like
I wasn't
the
here.
list.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm in the wrong
So you
place.
moved.
I'm on eligible properties, not projects. My bad.
No,
Sorry.
I'm like, where is she?
Which page, the red number or the black?
I'm using the black.
Upper and
So
the
I'm sorry,
18
Chris,
of 26.
Chris is on 18 of 26.
Yeah,
So I was somewhere
eligible
else,
projects.
18 of 26.
thinking that I knew what I was doing and I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got 14 of 22 and 18 of
Yeah.
26. We gotta do a better job.
Well, it's 18 of 26, and then it's page 9, but in the upper right-hand corner, it's
14 of
Yeah.
22.
14 of 22.
So we're going with the black at the bottom,
All right.
18 of 26.
Yeah.
So,
Mine says 18 to 27.
For real?
no.
Yes.
Sorry, so the numbering from the last month's packet was one different.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Okay, no wonder,
So everybody knows
can't
we're
even
on
get past that.
eligible projects.
Projects, not
Okay.
eligible
18 of 26.
properties.
Yeah.
And so it just goes back, I'll just say, anything on there that if you just quick glance through there, that we say, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And Kristen, you already brought shrubs and trees within the front yard. That's one that we might be able to help. Tim, if you can check with Bill, because I think we started, or we're in the process of starting our own tree place. We have a section that's gonna be in Public Works that we start growing trees
Is that in
from the root.
Is that in the terrace, or is that actually on people's property?
I don't know how large a
It
capacity
says
we have.
within the front yard, so that's more than the terrace.
But
What I'm getting at is
Yeah.
that could be part of our program,
Yeah.
though. Is if we have those trees available, or bushes.
Oh, I love that idea.
'Cause
I
it-
don't, I'm still off on the page numbers, because if you don't, what I read about this, if you don't go to page 13 of 26 and make that eligibility, you don't even get to page 18. So I think we gotta, the first thing on here is the
Oh, I think we
amount
gotta
of
come back to
income
that.
and so forth first, then you get here. So you can't get to a project that I have, or Al has, as he's talked about it, and get the money for it, if you don't meet the requirements on page 13 first of low income.
Yeah, but I
Right,
think
page
the
13
first
of-
thing that happens is you're gonna have this improvement project that you wanna do. And, you know, your normal process would be to come up with some kind of number for it. And you can look and see whether it's eligible, and then you gotta go back and say, do I qualify?
You gotta figure out, do you qualify for it?
That's gonna be your page 13, is what you're
Yes.
talking about. I was going a different route, so we can start with that. I was just starting with the eligible projects. To see if there's any in here that we'd want to eliminate right off the bat that doesn't apply to one a key.
what, for C, instead of just saying repair, replacing windows, would it be energy efficient? I know it costs more, but I just feel that replacing with lower cost windows is not necessarily in the best interest of anybody.
Well, except that you're probably replacing windows that are non-functional.
That's
I
probably
mean,
true.
You know, that you're kind of assuming there's a certain base level that we gotta get everything up to, and,
Probably true.
Yeah.
So I
Again,
think we're getting to that down at the bottom, upgrading mechanical systems. If we're upgrading mechanical systems, that's, you're gonna be your furnace, your air conditioning,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. I mean, we could add energy efficiency to that.
But is that one of the criteria for approving the grant? You know, on the last 2 pages of the metrics is, and I'm not sure what.
I don't know.
Is, if you're going with the eligible projects, are any of these energy efficient? And if they are, you get a score between 0 and 4. And is that enough weight, or do you simply want to say there that they have to be energy efficient? And again, I'm trying to step into their shoes, saying, wait a second, you know, I can't afford a 98% high energy fuel furnace.
That's true. But as long as some weight is put on it.
And I can't afford Pella windows and, you know,
yeah, I think if you got, what we're talking about is, we're trying to, you know, improve it from rotting sills and, you know, windows that aren't necessarily working very well, maybe they're not functioning at all, they're still there and blocking, you know, 80% of the rain in the.
Or
in
ready
the
to
wind.
fall out.
As someone else earlier had mentioned the different rebates and things like that that are available for energy efficiency upgrades. Say we point them in that direction for that part of it and keep this
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it could make it so it's free, if they apply for the
Yeah,
grant.
Right.
with
They do it
those,
right.
You know.
There's so many.
Part of it. It might not be a bad idea, Tim, for us to have in somebody from Greiber, heating and air, one of the heating and air conditioning companies here, maybe somebody from Wanacue Remodeling, just to give us ideas of what ranges for things are. You know, we don't wanna probably have people put the cheapest things in, but we also don't need them having to put the most expensive. And they might be able to give us kind of a range of what those things would cost to do. Because if we're giving a grant, I think it was to your point there earlier, if we're giving a grant for $5,000 and it's gonna be a $35,000 fix, it's probably like, I can't do
Bless
it.
you. Sorry.
You can't do it anyways. Bless you. Does that make sense? Would that be helpful, you guys think? I mean, I don't know what building costs are right now.
I can tell you what it costs for having them priced right now for
windows?
window replacement, yes. Yeah, not
I
cheap.
mean, same thing with.
are you waiting for this program to be implemented before you apply?
I am. Let's get going, guys. Get some
been doing-
windows.
Windows and all the people that need to do a roof are hail chanting by their house, so.
Yeah.
You know, getting back to your question on Chris, on 18 of 30, 26, you know, are there things we should add or delete? Just going through the list, install guards and handrails. Is that like an elderly thing, or is that like your walkway, or?
Even for children.
There's a section too on not taking porches off of, if you've been through Menasha and some of their residential neighborhoods, a lot of people have removed these beautiful, what could be beautiful Victorian porches. And so you can see that there should have been a porch in the front facade, or there will be stairs. Almost all of the homes are built above grade, and you'll have a 4 or 5 stair approach to your front door, and there won't be railings, or the porches will be missing railings, and it'll be a 4 or 5 foot drop. We're talking some houses that are in stages of neglect.
Would we,
Yeah.
would if we had something in here that just said, like, building code upgrades or something, would
Yeah.
that cover that?
Yeah, bringing things up to code.
Because there are properties that they're not safe.
Yeah.
Well, that's one issue, but my issue goes a step further than that. As we age, if you talk to any occupational therapist or whoever comes to the home and says, you know what, you're old enough, you need to pick up all your throw rugs, you need to have handrails, would this program pay for some of that stuff?
It would keep people in their homes, perhaps.
That's what I'm getting at. Because otherwise, they can't afford to put handrails in, can't afford to put, you know, I'm not sure this would qualify, but the chair that goes up the stairs, you sit in the chair and it goes up the stairs all the way and so on. But making it
A
senior
ramp.
affordable or something like that.
A ramp to
Accessible,
be able to
ADA
go from the interior to outside. I mean, that's a big expense
Yeah.
for some families.
So I'm just asking the question. I agree, there's a lot of things as we age that we need that are over and above just traditional, whether it's a front porch and putting a handrail out there because it's the code and should be there anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas we can go with that. I mean, Jeff, you probably know this. I mean.
Bathrooms are a big deal.
Bathrooms, larger
Most of
doors,
the faults take
larger
place,
doors.
so rails and raised toilets and a whole bunch of things go in there. And there are funds available if your income, just like there is for energy efficiency, there's spots you can go to get those kind of
Yeah.
assistance on your.
Which is, again, is something that we could educate people on
Mhm.
too, to it.
Right.
Yeah, we don't eliminate it, but we direct people to where they're
There's-
help rather than in addition to our dollars.
That other projects category kind of saves us for,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the ADA thing that we, I mean, I don't know who said that, but
Elements of universal design.
that would be part of what could be in here,
Yeah.
more so than, I don't know which one Al said, G, guards and handrails, that's probably,
I just didn't know what that meant, and that's a good clarification, if that's on the exterior or the interior. And if it's the interior, then is it the senior thing?
senior and then ADA.
And ADA, but again, I'm thinking from my perspective, is trying to keep the seniors in their home. They're already paying the atrocious real estate taxes. Now they gotta put in some kind of handrails and guardrails and elevated toilets and all that kind of stuff.
And
Yeah,
a big
I-
one is a bathtub to a roll-in shower where you can roll your wheelchair right into the shower. That's probably the most expensive of those kind
Yeah,
of
and
things.
that's where I'm coming from, is just that type of, are those costs included?
I know people right now that are in their own homes and trying to make decisions. They know that they have this much that's going to go to their property taxes. And they're trying to calculate out if they have someone come in and shovel and come in and mow, and how they're going to update their house so that they can get around in it. So, and I actually know people who are in that position right now.
So what I'm hearing basically is, this list is pretty good.
Yeah.
Everybody's in that, and if we see any, or think of any others, we can always add them too.
The most troubling one I have here is other projects may be eligible for reimbursement upon approval of the community development director. That opens the door wide open as to what does the development director say yes to and what does he say no to. It's the other category.
If you want the
How about I say
headache,
we scratch that?
I
Yeah.
like
I would
that.
say take it out. I mean,
would
if
too.
they have a,
Because it puts that person in a really
Lot-
tough
lot of
spot.
Yeah.
discretion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Not that we don't trust that person, it's just, it puts
No,
that
I-
person in a bad spot. that they
plus
to
you get
be-
into all kinds of allegations of discrimination
Right.
and all kinds of other ugly things.
All right, so scratch O.
A suggestion, perhaps, instead of scratching it, what if you included other projects, maybe eligible for recommendation or something like that? So if, for example, whether it's me or whomever that's administering this, sees something that's not on the list and say, hey, would you consider this? Whatever this thing is. Just throwing that out there. If,
So I would say, Tim, if that situation comes, that it just comes before this body and we would decide it as this body.
Yeah.
And if it makes sense, it might be something we would need to add to our list for others.
okay,
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
striking home, all right.
I do like on the next page, the only projects that employ professional labor shall be eligible for the program. And I say this is a dedicated DIYer who has ripped out many a bathroom and built out many a basement.
So what is in here is, as part of the, before the monies can get allocated, or not allocated, but dispersed, the receipts from that qualified contractor have to be submitted. And so the work has to be done by that qualified contractor, and evidence of that.
All right,
You're saying
so
you
let's
don't agree
come,
with
let's,
No, I do agree with it.
Okay.
I do agree with it. Yeah, you guys
Okay.
don't wanna,
so let's come back to that one.
maybe you do.
Let's flip to page
I really
14.
do.
Now, I think since we got our eligible products, let's go with 14 of 26. And talk about, am I at the wrong page, Jeff?
13.
13.
13, sorry. I was like, where's nothing there? Eligible properties. So let's tackle eligible properties.
what?
what?
Eligible properties, so there's gonna be a chart at the top and then eligible properties.
It's
Okay.
13 of
13 of
26.
13 and 26 on the bottom.
13.
13.
Okay, I was on 14.
Yep, I was off on 14.
Here we go, okay.
So why don't we start with This is curb appeal program. Does everybody like the terminology of that? Curb appeal program?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't know.
Okay,
You can, yeah, so you can call it
Sounds like all
A&D,
you're doing is
whatever you wanna
cosmetics.
call it,
so
Yeah.
what do we want to call this then?
Because it could be much more than curb appeal. Not new siding, not new porch.
It may have zero
Housing
impact on the
renovation?
outside.
Residential property program?
Neighborhood
you
improvement
go.
program?
Yeah.
Residential is refining it. Well, okay, so let's back up a second on that. I like the residential. What about duplexes?
They're
What about
residential.
fourplexes?
They're all
Residential?
residential.
They're still residences.
We're not saying single-family property, residential property.
I did this on purpose,
Yeah.
and you might want to change me out of this, is what you're telling me.
I was gonna say, so
If you
just,
went like
just,
I grasped,
that's,
we're not
that's a
supposed to go
small
here.
raise in the hand. So that is one of the two programs. So curb appeal is their $5,000 flavor, and the major renovation is the $10,000 flavor. So that's just what they call them. The whole program is their,
I mean, curb appeal is pretty much landscaping and stuff
So
like
what-
that, right?
so landscaping, yeah, landscaping is limited, I think, to 10%. Up to 10% could be, of the dollars could be allocated toward landscaping. But just in terms of what do you want to call this? I mean, there's the overall, the big picture program, housing rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it. But then within that, there are, in the Menasha's case, they actually have 3 tiers: curb appeal, major renovation, and property acquisition. And you can call them whatever you want, but I think there's, to differentiate the dollar difference, we should call them something different. Whether it's, and we'll get to the question of, is 5,000 appropriate or 10,000, given housing costs, et cetera. I'm sure we'll get there a little later. But, yeah, you raise a good point though, Chris. What do you wanna, how do you wanna differentiate the tiers within this program?
Residential renovation fund?
Are you talking now about the whole umbrella program? So I will throw out a suggestion, and it's actually in your packet that you all came up with a year ago-ish. Let me see if I can find it. Of course, now I can't. You came up, you had a name for it, last year. Shoot. I think I may have, last
While you're
month.
looking for that, Chris, does one key have a 0 lot line variance? In other words, if I have a duplex, can I own half the duplex and someone else own the other half of the duplex with a 0 lot line
It's
variance?
a subdivision, not a variance, probably.
It's called
Tim, you
calling
would
them
probably know
twin
this better
homes
than me.
now.
Yeah.
Lot line, no, you can, I think.
Isn't it just, it's just called a zero lot line subdivision, correct?
Right, something like that.
Yeah.
Because I know people have done that, where, so then I just have to buy half a duplex, and I sell my half a duplex. Or, you can say fourplex, so that's the next question, but, because then it gets into whether it's eventually rental or not. Let's get your first.
So that's actually, Chris, so to your point though, yeah, what do you wanna call this? Yeah.
Well, I think we've identified the projects, right?
Yep, the eligible, yep.
And what page was that? 18? 18. So some of these are smaller and some of these are larger within here. Is that fair to say? I mean, a roof being replaced is very different than just replacing gutters. Two different things completely. So are we putting all of these eligible projects under one term? Or are they have it broken into 3 tiers. Do we need 3 tiers is what I'm asking.
That's up to you.
I think we
I
all
don't
agreed on the
think so.
property acquisition one, not, right?
I'd like to see one,
I'd see
one
one.
program.
Yeah.
Just one program?
Yeah.
This would be for renovation.
Yep,
Your percentages of total cost would help dictate the level of maximum award.
Yeah, I mean, we could take the eligible projects, once we know kind of what they run, and we could have a max, just tier them based on what they are. Is that potential?
I don't know if you have to go that far, because I think if you're doing multiple things within that and you've ended up with a $50,000 renovation, you still wanna have a cap on there, but if it's lower, it's a percentage of whatever the total cost would be that are eligible. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but what if I have a project this year, I put in windows this year, I get my 10 grand. Next year I put a roof on, I get my 10 grand. Next year do siding, get my 10 grand.
that's probably part of the criteria of past awards. I think that's actually in here, isn't it?
I think
Yeah.
we'll come to that one. That's
Yeah.
still to
Yeah.
be determined.
I think it's kind
So-
of a one and done, right?
That's my feeling.
So
Yeah.
it looks like
Yeah.
15,000 is the
Gain of
max somebody
window
can
or
get.
something.
Is that right? Did I read it all right? Or did I miss it somewhere?
If you-
So like, you got,
Yep, 20
what
on,
is city match, private match?
the 20 on the major renovation, that's the.
Yeah.
Private is what you put in,
Or is it some other?
and the city matches.
So the person puts in 10, city matches 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, depending on if they're the
Got it.
homeowner or the
Yep.
landlord.
Yeah,
Okay,
awkward terminology,
yes.
private match.
I was thinking maybe the business community's in for,
Yeah.
Everybody
In this
comes to the
too.
village president and asks for a personal loan again.
Well, it even gets more complex now that you guys raise, what if you get energy credit? Does that reduce, does that include, you go gross amount or reduce for the energy credit or the senior credit for the toilets, whatever?
I think if I come in and I went to the trouble to get the energy credits, et cetera, I get credit for that under the private match.
Yeah, that's
Would be
fine.
I mean,
That
because
would
it's
make
probably
sense.
gonna drive the cost, getting those extra funds is gonna make the project greater.
Yeah.
So I think if
So
they
it's
go
the
to the
gross
trouble.
dollars.
Yeah,
Gross dollars before any credits or rebates.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
okay, so, let's just go through this then. Eligible property.
Chris, mind if I jump in with, so,
Go.
under the 2 tiers, the minimum project value of 2,000, that's the curb appeal program. So minimum 2,000, under the other one, it's a minimum project value of 15,000. So I think they wanted to have, kind of smaller and larger. If we don't do one, that's okay, but then I think about how, we have this pot of money and how, who would get it, so to speak? If someone just wants to do a little, would they get sort of bumped out of line by someone who wants to do a big project? I don't s-
I think, we've got page 13, you've got one set of criteria. Page 15, you've got another set of criteria. The question is, do we want to roll that into one program only, or do we want to tier it out like these 3 programs are here?
I see what you're saying, that the risk of not doing that is that you could have a $25,000 landscape curb appeal project, and now all of a sudden you're in the bigger category versus the $2,000 category. I mean, not, landscaping is probably not, but like siding, but
What if we just did a percentage, if we just said we're gonna match a third of the project, we're gonna take care of a third of the project? So if it's $10,000, village is 3, or the fund is 3, and 7 for the person. Roughly, I'm just
is that,
roughly,
yeah,
30%.
is that enough incentive?
What's the incentive?
So here's a thorny question to bring up. Do we have the same need for curb appeal that Menasha has? I mean, we're talking some derelict properties in Menasha. I think even in our older homes, in our older neighborhoods, most of them are still pretty nice.
A
I
lot
think
of
people take pride in their properties.
Yeah,
They've invested their funds in those properties.
yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah,
Down
so
West
I,
Street,
you
That's
know,
what the guy is doing to his, all the effort he's doing personally on, he's got scaffolding up and he's tearing off his old siding and fixing underneath it and then reapplying, so he's in his 2nd year of doing it,
yeah.
Yeah, I agree, I don't see us looking at $25,000-$30,000 worth of landscaping. That's not what this, we don't have that kind of money anyway, and so it's not something that I'm gonna vote for if it comes in front of us,
So just focusing on that major renovation
Yeah.
as the
yeah,
crux of the program.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking for ideas from all of you.
If it's attached to in my opinion, if it's like siding and windows and roofing, I mean, those are all part of curb appeal, but it's attached to the house versus trees and,
Flowers, beds, and,
which I love, but
Yeah, but-
yeah.
But they only flower for so long,
Yeah.
and then they can be overgrown like crazy. bunch of them.
So we're getting hung up on the term curb appeal and what that means. Is that what we're doing, as opposed to house appeal or home improvements or some other?
I think you're inviting the kind of requests that we really aren't interested in when you're talking curb appeal. I'm thinking this is fundamental, fix the house
Yeah.
to make it a better quality,
Yeah.
livable space. So
I
curb
think-
appeal just sends the wrong message, so I don't
Everything
wanna
that's
use that
listed
one.
under, agree with you, everything that's listed under eligible projects for the major renovation, it would include things like the siding, the porches,
Yeah.
got, like, pretty much everything that would be, make the house more livable, safe.
Yeah, everything on page 18 is in
Yeah.
that category.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out what is total we're giving.
Oh,
So you're saying
How are we
what
matching
total?
to it?
Oh, okay.
Okay. And that's, gets back to your question about the smaller program, larger program. And just because I'm gonna say something to get the conversation going, what about a minimum of 2,000, a maximum of 10,000? Our
For the
portion of
project
it,
or
our
the
portion, our
investment?
portion of it, and it's a 50-50 thing.
So they spend $4,000
4,
project, we give them 2.
Right, yep.
If it's 6, we give
Three.
them 3.
They spend 80, they get 10.
There's a limit on
But
our
they
end.
probably won't make the income requirement.
Now, is it just for the curb appeal that they'd make a distinction between homeowners versus landlords? That homeowners get a 1-to-1 match and landlords get a 1-to-2 for every $1 the city gives, the landlord spends $2?
Do I,
The matrix
do I
has that in
care
there, but I don't know
if it's owner occupied or not, depending, well, it really depends on what they're spending the money on, right? If they're,
Yeah.
if it's a two-flat and they're fixing up the rental, or both, it's,
Do we
it's
care?
fixing up the quality of our housing units, right? I'd kinda hate to give, the negative side is, if you give me $10,000 and I spend it on my lower half where I'm living and I don't do squat upstairs and I still got a, marginal, so that's the tricky part about it, but
Or maybe that's part of the approval process, like if you're only,
Tim,
Description of what they're doing.
Yeah.
is the matrices that are in the back, is that for the major renovation fund, or am I misunderstanding this?
It's both, so the
Okay.
last page is the major, the second to last page is, I'll say, the minor. And they're called, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if that's, like, because if we're looking at this, then some of these questions we're having are embedded in that.
Right, so they set up the scoring criteria, and that's why, again, with the small, say the smaller, what they call curb appeal, it's, you meet the criteria, you get the dollars, up to, that, whatever that, I think it was 5, whatever the max was in that one. And then the other one, though, it's same thing, it's a scoring matrix, but it could be more discretion in terms of, well, we like the project, but we're only gonna give you 8,000, or whatever the case, whatever you decide.
So I have a procedural question. Are we talking about predominantly, I'll use the term rather loosely, owner-occupied residential homes? What if I have a home that I bought and I'm renting out?
both floors,
What's that?
yeah, or two-flat and you rent both.
Again, if it's predominantly owner-occupied, that would be the 2 flats, in my mind, that would include the 2 flats and things that are being rented out as part of my predominant home. But rental property, someone who's got a rental property and then a trade or business of renting, does this qualify? Do these dollars qualify to that person? To me, that's a little different world. If I own a home and renting it out.
So one of the criteria would be, does that landlord meet the income requirements, or because they're a landlord and they can afford this, and that their income is going to be higher? So you'd still have the owner, whoever that owner is, would need to be at the low income level.
And I don't have a definite conclusion, but from my mind, given it's a business, it's the owner that determines what they're gonna do or not do. If they wanna make up more rent, they gotta fix it up themselves. Let the owner determine what rent they wanna pay and how much they're gonna invest in the property. Are we gonna try and incentivize these rental people to make more rent for themselves. I struggle with that. But I can
struggle
see
with
in the
that too.
case where the house has to be predominantly used by the owner, and if it's a two-flat, that's, to me, acceptable, or,
So I was gonna go even different than you. Is that owner a resident? Or are they out of Chicago
yeah, that's another issue.
or
yeah.
somewhere else?
Yeah, yeah.
I would have to say, I would expect that, here's David Kennedy, okay? And I have a house, and I have a house that's 2 flats. I probably don't meet the income requirements, because I can afford to have that rental property in the first place. I mean,
That's what I was trying to say, I
yeah.
agree with you.
You know, even in my advanced age of 70, folks, and you know, I'm losing my paycheck as of last Friday. You know, still, I just don't see, you know, people who own additional properties to what they live in aren't gonna hit our,
No, they'll probably show their income is too high if they own 2 residences.
yeah. So I don't,
I've done enough tax returns, and I've seen a lot of people very wealthy with negative incomes.
yeah, that's a different ballgame.
That comes back to who's monitoring this and who's managing it.
But you gotta know the manipulation of income,
Yeah.
and, you know, how you create, is a taxable income off the tax return? Real estate people are known for having negative taxable income because of depreciation, and writing off everything they buy.
And making sure they keep buying.
Keep buying and leveraging up, yeah. And I know that, how that works, but my point is more just generic, and to me, the program, I think, works if it's the predominant, it's an predominantly owner-occupied house. And if that includes a 2-flat, so be it, but then that owner's gotta meet the income criteria. They don't have the same real estate leverage that people in the trade of business have.
Yeah, we're not talking about people who are manipulating their financial statements when we're talking about somebody living.
But I think too, you could almost, I don't know if this comes into, there's gotta be a little bit of just judgment call in there, because you could have a person that's living in the lower level and they're making the upstairs an apartment to be able to stay in the home, to be able to afford to stay there. Or, in my case, when my grandma, got, you know, was older after my grandpa passed, my mom and her siblings bought a house for her. You know, they necessarily couldn't afford a separate house for a rental income, but they wanted my grandma to have a place. But there's exceptions that probably don't hit all of the black and white that we're trying to put into this, that somehow we'll have to just.
I think those that'll come before us.
Yeah, exactly.
Common
We're gonna have
sense.
some exceptions.
And so there's gonna be appeal
Yeah,
process.
the common sense test, yeah.
I don't know what the number's gonna be, but probably at least 70% of our residents are not gonna qualify.
Right.
This is really gonna affect and impact our most poor people and our seniors. Those are the two that I see this really impacting.
By the way,
majority-
Chris, it's 80-20. Everything is always 80-20, not 70-30.
I was trying to not offend anyone, and I was trying to, I was being political right there. I'm on camera, so I have to make sure that I'm, you know, with that. But that is the truth of this situation. And that's why the program is important, because the people that we're gonna help are the ones that need it.
Right.
And as I said, the majority of people living in Wanakee are not in a financial circumstance, and that's how they got into Wanakee. And our seniors are the ones that need this the most, as far as I'm concerned. So, we can go through all the criterias and make sure we're good on it, but I think that's the demographic that this will impact the most, those two demographics. So, just knowing from the banking side and the eligibility to get into the homes, our criteria is probably gonna be more difficult than a bank's criteria,
Yeah, yeah.
is what I'm getting at, in a lot of banks, that's true. The amount of percentages down, first-time buyer programs, all those things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you're kind
People
of
are-
talking about that absentee, not even Wanakee resident landlord
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
concerned about it. And I don't think we're real concerned about that, and we probably maybe can ferret that out through just the regular process of somebody coming in and,
I know somebody that lives down the street from you, some housing, that was owned by people out of state, and they did not really keep them very well. And they would definitely have been eligible for repairs of facade and looking at them, but they didn't live here.
Right.
Go to Florida after they retire.
They're out of Chicago. But anyhow, all right. So we've figured out eligible projects. I personally think we should probably restrict this to single-family homes. I don't know if we should want to get into the other, just for this focus on what I'm talking about, not two flats and others. I think we just stay with single-family home at this point, not rentals. We can come to those. I'm just saying, they're gonna be in a different category, I think.
The city of Madison just approved, after a long time of not approving, the mother-in-law house above the garage or in the backyard for that reason of having affordable. At least that's the discussion that went on for that approval of that, is that it was around affordable.
Yeah, that article said there were 20 or 25 of them approved, but the article said, so far only have been approved, and the number was missing from the article. So I don't know if they were gonna say it was 4 out of the 25 or what it was, but, yeah, that was.
Myself, to be clear, I am not going home to my wife and saying we're gonna put my mother-in-law in a tent in the backyard. I'm not gonna do that.
And that's on camera.
That's right, I got
Let it
proof,
be known.
I got proof, I'm not going home to say that. So, okay,
I don't agree with just the single family. I think the 2 flats should be included.
we should put it in there?
I think so.
I have mixed feelings about it.
Again, I think that those may be difficult, but as I go back to the demographics of who I think is gonna be applying, I don't know that the seniors are gonna be applying that are two flat situations.
But you could let that rule determine that.
Sure.
You don't have, I think I'm with David, I think if somebody is low income and they've got this opportunity to improve their income through that source of, once this thing's remodeled, someone will rent it, and they wouldn't before. I think that's part of our goal also, would be to.
It would be utilizing space that otherwise may not be used.
Yeah.
So I will retract my statement and do that, because now I just realized that in my family, an aunt by the zoo in Madison had a resident upstairs. She put a stairway out to get to
Yep.
separate it. So you're right.
Even college kids that are coming back that have jobs that can't afford a
Yeah.
place to live may end up being attendants in the, I hope not.
Great point.
And that's why I made the
Bite my
reference
tongue.
That's why we have a basement bedroom.
house has to be owner occupied, whether it's, others are there, that's okay. And
Yeah.
It's the owner that then has to meet their criteria, but the home's gotta be owner occupied. It can't be in a trade or business or for rent.
I agree with that.
I agree
Yeah.
with that too.
Okay, you got that, Tim?
Okay, 1 and 2 family homes must be
Owner
owner
occupied.
Owner
occupied.
occupied.
Right.
And we can expand it later if we see there's an opportunity,
Or people appeal to us.
yeah.
For something that's a different circumstance.
Yeah.
So as I see this, Tim, you're gonna take a stab at putting all this together. And then next meeting, we'll have a chance to review it and critique it and refine and finalize perhaps at the meeting after.
Yes.
Okay. So we have another kick at the cat. And
Yeah.
plus, we're getting so many esoteric discussions now, it's kinda hard to visualize, what exactly we're trying to accomplish, so. If
Okay.
you can see it on paper, it might help us understand the merits of it.
So going back to page 13, let's talk about what our maximum amount is that somebody can get paid.
What's the total amount in the fund again, Tim?
So right now, we're at about, it's like 183.6 or something like that, remaining.
How much can be used of that 183? Are we past that threshold?
Oh, hang on, let me go.
Just to make sure that we can use it for just housing, that it doesn't have to be affordable housing.
So we started with 510, we awarded 326, which leaves 183.
Because it's 25%, correct?
Yep, 25% of that fund could be, so of the original 510, if we said 75% has to be allocated to affordable, that's 382,
What do we give to Con Esri?
326.6.
It's 62,000 we have to be affordable on.
At least,
this-
at least, you could, if you wanted to do all of it, you
Right.
could, but.
Does this qualify as affordable?
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it?
Well, sure, if
Yeah.
if in your criteria, only those who can apply are income qualified,
Yeah.
then yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would qualify.
yeah.
Okay, and are we doing only that?
At this point, we don't have enough funds to do anything else. I
Yeah.
mean, we'd be stretching ourselves pretty thin if we tried to do anything else.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
I
that
mean,
we're all on the same page. that it's gonna be
otherwise-
Only affordable.
yeah, if we try to do something else, we may not have enough funds to make it worthwhile to start trying to do what we've just talked about.
Yeah. So when they say affordable, are they talking 80% AMI or below?
Good question.
Yeah,
So
what-
the
because
definition
that's
in
a-
statute is 30%.
Okay.
Paying no more than 30% of your income for housing costs.
Well, that's not what Kristen just said, though.
Yeah, so the two definitions of
Different things.
affordable versus income qualified, which one, are they using the 30% or like the LIHTC?
Good, yeah, so this,
And do we
that's
want
a
to use
decision I
that?
think you have to
Yeah.
make, but the statute says 30, and I think we talked about this a while ago, and Al, you may have brought it up, so let's say, like, if someone makes, just a wild example, 500,000, and they're paying over 30%, do they qualify for this? Well, arguably, under the statute, yeah.
Mhm.
But is that how you want to use this program?
I would rather see it with what we were talking about, the housing task force.
Yeah, I like it, personally like it pegged to AMI.
Yes.
And whether that's 80% or below or 60% below of area median income.
But we have
It's
to
up to
abide by
us.
the statute that we had for the monies.
Right.
Does that,
Well, under that scenario, that would.
Yeah.
That should, yeah, so, and we
I'm
can get
talking
those,
about the TIF.
I'm sorry?
Because it's TIF money that we're using.
right?
What definition is it that they're using in the TIF? Is it that definition, or is it the one you started with?
It's the
Or either
30,
or.
but that, what Kristen is talking about, I think is a subset of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can do both. That you have to make 80% or less of area median income, and I think, what is our area median income in Dane County right now? It's like 103,
Something like that.
it's pretty high,
Just over 100, yeah.
just over 100.
Yeah.
So
That's- we can pull
80,000,
that.
household income 80,000 or less, and then if you hit that
1.3.
threshold, no more than 30% of your income dedicated to housing costs. So there are like two bars that
So
you
it'd
have
be
to
based on
have.
80,000.
Yeah,
Do we care about the second part? In other words, if they meet the 80%, do we really care about whether or not they're making 25% or 30% or 10% or 40% to pay for their housing expenses?
I think the statute requires
That's
us
a
to
different
care about
issue
it.
then. Okay.
Yeah,
So then,
Mhm.
in that
yeah.
in that percentage you're talking about, is that, okay, let's say senior citizen, property taxes, utility, what is that, what's included in
Mortgage
that?
And there,
payment.
it's three,
Just mortgage payment.
it's your mortgage, it
Interest.
is your taxes, and your,
Interest, right?
yes.
Okay, because there are many senior citizens who don't
No,
Have a
so
mortgage.
have a mortgage.
There's,
Utilities.
let me pull that up, yeah.
I mean, their biggest expense is their property taxes.
I thought utilities was included.
is.
It might be,
in some
it might be.
Utilities, mortgage, and real estate taxes. Which most
So
seniors.
your
Which
mortgage
are very
payment,
fair in
yeah,
Wanakee.
Right.
I,
So
I,
E&I,
I don't,
yes.
So
I
here
didn't.
it says
for some reason
housing-related
I had that.
expenses. So in the
Housing
middle of
related, that's
page
changed.
15, it's
Yeah.
30%, property owners cannot spend more than 30% of their gross monthly household income on housing-related expenses.
Cheapers.
Does that include,
Repairs?
does that include utilities?
That's by,
Utilities,
Yeah.
insurance.
they're going by statute, there's a definition someplace
Yeah,
I've seen what
someplace,
that
yeah.
means. I think it's utilities, mortgage, P&I, and real estate taxes, those three components. Can't exceed 30% of your income.
Which are very fair in Wanakee.
Which, and let's face it, that is hard. If you're in Wanakee, and you're making $80,000 household income a year, even if you're in one of our more affordable homes, you may be paying more than 30%.
How are senior incomes calculated on this?
Then I guess that's our
Or what?
flex.
How are senior incomes, are we looking at what their social security
25%
check
of that
is, or what their,
to
what are we
dollar
talking
doesn't
about for
have to be
figuring that
affordable,
out?
maybe
I
it's
don't
All
know.
forms of
That can be
income.
very
Yeah.
affordable,
Interest, dividends,
interesting.
capital
Yeah.
gains.
exceed that 30%.
I don't know if it includes all that stuff. In capital gains, you go from 0 1 year
If
to,
it's just based on
Yeah.
30%
Yeah,
of
it's
the
just
income, doesn't.
30
I don't know how to
doesn't
calculate AMI. If it's earned income, well, seniors don't have earned income but for pensions and social security and 401Ks.
Kristen, do we know that?
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
We're talking about seniors, how we calculate their income.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got it all planned out. Every other year, because I've been listening to Al, I'm gonna be broke. I'm a senior.
We're not talking about you, Chris.
And I'm gonna clean up.
You just stated that on camera, that because you listen to Al, you're gonna be broke. How do you feel about that?
She's gonna sleep in my basement.
Because you just see that clip. That short clip.
Oh, very good. I can ruin the basement, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. Am I
Okay.
turning red?
So I think,
Your ears turned
No,
red.
I want to answer the question, Kristen.
Yeah, so,
What is AMI? How do you calculate AMI?
Area median income?
Yeah.
And right now, I think it's 103, but I haven't
But
looked it
for
up.
senior
123.
citizens,
How
how's
do
it
you
calculated?
calculate
we
it?
calculate a senior
calculate-
citizen's income. Do they social security check? Do we get that?
What does it say on their tax return? I
Yeah,
guess
but
that
then you
would
get the-
be, so
You
yeah.
get dividends, you get interest, your capital gains, and capital gains can go from a
Pensions.
loss to a lot of income.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
it based on the returns? Is that how you calculate
Well,
AMI?
you can make the, I would guess that would less be up to us and more be up to whoever sets those rules for senior housing and whatnot, that we should probably comply with those state and federal rules. But, I mean, you can talk, you can be very asset rich and very income poor.
I know.
So,
The DOR
Yeah.
website says the municipality should consult its attorney.
Tim,
Brian will figure it
I think
out.
you're gonna be checking with Brian. See
Yeah.
what, I just wanna make sure we're compliant with that.
Yeah.
As we said, that's gonna be a group that's
That's important.
Yeah.
definitely gonna be
Yeah.
looked at. All right. We're at our normal time for stop, but the grant guidelines, so I guess that's our homework for this next time, is look at guidelines for what we're gonna do. So Tim's gonna come back and kind of assemble what we've talked about to this point, so we can look at it, and then we're gonna look at, what guidelines to make sure we're all in agreement with what all has to be done for a person to be eligible.
Have you determined a min-max yet, or is that gonna be for next time?
Mid-max.
How much will lend?
Oh, the
So-
maximum a person people can get?
Yeah,
I liked what Al said earlier, that we have a $2,000 to
Put in for now, we can
$10,000.
always change it.
yeah, it was
2 and 10.
2 to 10, okay.
Is
I
everybody?
got a 50-50 match.
2 to 10, it's 50%.
And
Up
so,
to 50%, yeah.
Up to
and so we
50%.
give 10 and they put in 10,
Yes.
or we give 5?
Correct.
Okay, cool, yeah, yeah.
But do you think before we set that, we should find out what, if someone's in need of a furnace and what different costs are before we actually set that?
And I think, you might even be able to send an email to one or two of them and get a cost estimate for what those things are gonna
Right.
are gonna be. They don't necessarily have to come, I
Yeah.
guess, to the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, for furnace and air and,
Roof,
Yeah.
windows, driveway.
Would
All
that,
across the
so,
board.
at the risk of extending, would that really weigh into the degree to which you change those min-max?
yes, because if
If we're
The
way out of
numbers are-
scope at
yes,
2 to
yes,
10, I mean, does
yeah.
it need to be
does it need to
3
be
and
more?
15? Yeah.
To be clear where our fund is, I don't think we should go over 10, because we're gonna
Right.
Right.
deplete fast.
So if we're not going to go over 10, then we don't need that information.
Right.
So that's what I was
They
saying.
can give a
depends on-
range, though, on different things. So like I said, we don't want them to give the bare bones. We don't want them to have the Cadillac. We want to have something
Yeah.
that,
If I'm gonna replace windows at $600 a window and I got 10 windows, yeah, that's $6,000.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a free window, but it's not
on
exactly.
top of the door. Yeah, that's just it. We're just getting a
Kind of
general
gets you
idea.
a little bit of a mental picture of, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the window might be $600, but the labor right now might be $600 too.
Well, a window that we put in when we built a room cost us $400 at the time. We placed it last year and it cost $6,000. Because it's semicircle.
Ouch.
Okay, so are we good? Tim, are you
For
good
now,
with where we're
yeah,
at?
so this will be a whittled down version for next time, or there will be a whittled down
Tim,
version.
this is really good work that you brought
Yeah.
this, in this kind
I
of.
Yeah, I
thought
really
it was
like
it was a
seeing the
good
Menasha
start, at
thing.
least you can start picking and adding and
Thank you for that.
Simplifying.
Okay, so I need one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Everybody have a great week. Wanna Boom is right around the corner.